Hello, everybody. Welcome to Stargate and Cosmos. I'm your host, Janet Care Lessin. And I'm here with my co-host, Dr. Sasha Alex Lessin, and our producer is Thomas Becker, also known as a Mad Painter. And this is Revolution Radio, Studio B. And tonight we interview Christopher O'Brien. And try to get him online here. So, okay, start. Let me bring the mic closer. Okay, can you hear me now? Can you hear me? Hello? Oh, okay. Sorry. Our guest is Christopher O'Brien, and he moved to the San Luis Valley in 1989 and began his private investigation of unusual events, which were documented in his 1996 book, The Mysterious Valley. He has written articles for numerous magazines, including Fate, UFO Universe, Phenomena, Zeitgeist, UFO Encounters. This investigation of... Pardon?
What?
Hi, Chris. We're doing your intro. Hold on one moment, and then we'll bring you on. We're doing a brief intro for you, okay?
You don't sound very good from my end.
The sound doesn't sound good? Okay, Mad Painter, are you there? How's it sounding on your end? Are we good? Okay. I'm not sure what we can do, but it'll probably clear up. Anyway.
What kind of mic are you using? Yeah, that noise.
It's a mic. I was moving it around. I don't know the name of it. It's not showing, but it's a handheld, one with a pedestal. It's got the buffer. Anyway, we're live now, so let's just keep going.
Oh, okay. Oh, geez. Well, I'm an audio engineer and keyboard player, and I'm into all that techie stuff. Because whatever. Go ahead. Hey, how you doing? Welcome to the end of the world as we know it. I love it. We're going to be calling in about a month. It'll be before Corona and after Corona. It'll be AC and BC. Forever will be known as. It's like, oh boy, where were you before the bug?
Where were you before the bug? So what do you know about Corona? I want to Sasha say hi. Make sure he's coming.
Yeah. This, what's hello? Can you hear me? Am I coming out? Okay.
You sound good.
Okay. So look, we got an opportunity. It's like the whole world realizes we're all in this together. Israelis and Palestinians are cooperating. Everybody's in this together, and this is our chance. You know what? And the smog is going off of Peking and off of Calcutta and off of Delhi.
The animals in Venice are like, the dolphins are coming into the channels, in the streets of Venice. They have an amazing amount of wildlife that's actually, within days is coming into cities in Italy and in China and other places. In China, they chase them down and have them for dinner. But in places like Italy and the United States, it's amazing what'll happen when people get out of the way.
Yeah, the water's clearing up, and
it's
just so
no pollution, except for all
it's not without us. That's the whole. It's not without us. It's with us cooperating, Janet. That's the whole point.
Right. No, I'm talking about how the environment's cleaning up. But yes.
Well, in Wuhan, I think a lot more people died than they're letting on, and they had to burn them all. And all that sulfur dioxide was quite measurable from space. And there's quite a number of disturbing photographs of plumes of cremation that then rained black rain on Japan the last few days, and then back when it was really happening about a month ago, 3 weeks ago, Japan was actually getting black rain from all the cremated bodies being burnt in China. I bet you didn't.
I have a video that was sent to me that shows them out, and they're chasing down people. They have these huge trucks that are spraying, and then there's bodies on the street and people coming up to them. So yeah, I think they were lying to us. I think it was a lot worse. So how many people do you think died?
I really haven't been. I haven't been trying to. I've this kind of global stuff. I leave for the experts. I'm just seeing. Picking out particular news sources and then following up just a little bit. Just follow up on it. See if it's legit. See if it's just some bullshit. Can I say that? Ooh,
yeah, you can say bullshit. Yeah. It's not the F-bomb. You can't use the F-bomb.
We heard that when we were doing this presentation in Cottonwood, one of the presenters said
that that's the last time I saw
Department of Defense was experimenting with all kinds of stuff. The vegetation and animals die from some experiments they were doing.
Yeah.
Remember you were rapping about that?
Yeah. That's been going on off and on for years, even prior to the treaty, the Bacteriological and Chemical Weapons Treaty that actually Richard Nixon was able to get the legislation through, but Congress didn't sign it until he was out of office, and Ford actually signed it into law. But that was back in 73, 74. Supposedly, for these ensuing 40 plus years, we have not been doing anything in terms of weaponizing bacteria and that sort of thing. Of course, we've been developing countermeasures to these things, and the only way you can come up with a way to fight it is to have it there to begin with, so you can fight. So we have to invent, the threat that we then put all the billions of dollars into or millions of dollars into, counteracting these chemical and biological agents. So go figure. It's there's a few things that are a little downwind of the fish market, like the Wuhan Bacteriological Laboratory, which I believe is the only known bacteriological laboratory in China. It's just quite interesting that right downwind of the fish market, where supposedly the Wuhan virus first raised its nasty little head, and the only thing I can find that really makes sense scientifically, not being a geneticist or anything, but they seem to think that it was a mutated bat virus that got into a pangolin, which is those weird little anteater type creatures that have all the scales on them. They're pretty rare. Called a pangolin. It's similar to an armadillo. A pangolin. But that's what they think. That's where they think the virus came from. That it got from,
Story. That's the official.
Yeah, right away. If it's anything,
it makes a lot of sense.
Right with the administration it keeps hinting. The president keeps hinting that it originated somehow from that factory that you were alluding to. I think you're right on.
It's not factory. It was a wild animal market and a fish market is where the virus would supposedly started. Now, I think that's real, based on what little I know about epidemiology, which is a fair amount, and the spread of viruses and things that, especially something that we don't have any sort of immunity to. I mean, this is just like every single person that comes in contact is a wide open playing field. I mean, there ain't no fullbacks and defensive backs and the defensive players in your immune system. These things are going right through everything because we don't have any sort of resistance built up or any sort of immunity whatsoever for this particular classification of disease. This is serious stuff. People aren't taking it seriously, but from the numbers that I can see that makes sense. It's like 8 or 9, possibly even 10% fatal, which is 10 times that of a regular flu. It seems to be way more contagious. In other words, it doesn't take much exposure from one person to another to then contract the virus, which is more than flu, more than colds. It seems to be more robust. Can
you get it twice?
Yes, you can. We've had already. According to the newspaper reports, they've I think had not one but 2 cases, and they have a case of a pet getting the virus. They don't think pets can contract and then spread the virus, but they have some empirical evidence that suggests that even pets can get this virus. So it's this is a real deal. It's before Corona and after Corona. It could have been SARS. It could have been MERS. They're not as virulent as this, but they've known about this classification of it's probably because of the bats. Check this out. I love this theory. It's not mine, but a scientist said, well, bats are being driven out of their natural places where they spend most of their time in the dark, in caves, under eaves and stuff, and they've been driven out into the ultraviolet radiation more than normal, because they're totally nocturnal. They do not go out in the sunshine, and if they're being bombarded by ultraviolet radiation, that could really more easily mutate their genes. And so if they get something like a respiratory type virus and it mutates, that's when other animals will catch it, and then God forbid it goes into the human gene pool, because that's when all bets are off. It seems to me, and I'm looking at this actually intuitionally. I think that there's a heavy duty strain and then a not so heavy duty strain, and I think that there definitely is 2 different variations of what's going on. And again, that's just an intuition. Scientifically, I have no leg to stand on, but doesn't it seem like some places get hit by a really nasty one, and then other places it seems like there's more people getting it, but it's not as catastrophic for as many, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I don't know whether that's maybe a function of how packed, impact, and close the people are. That could be a function of it. When I was in Fiji, I'm an anthropologist, there were thousands of bats in my mango tree, and I realized that if the bats were infected, all the people that ate the mangoes would get infected too.
That's possible, yeah. Although, viruses don't do well in stomach acid. So if you're eating fruit that's infected, there's a good possibility that your, gastric process will take care of the virus. But that's not a guarantee. Just being around it could be deadly.
So you were saying it's going to be before the virus and after the virus. So let me just, I put up, there's a site called NCOV2019.live, NCOV2019.live, because it started in 2019. So briefly, there's 421,869 confirmed cases. We have 18,805 that have died. We have 11,834 that are serious, and 105,264 have recovered. And 184 out of 195 countries in the world are infected. So this is a great site. It constantly updates with the numbers.
Yeah, I know that kid really should. He's an amazing computer nerd. The kid that came up with that. I saw a really interesting piece on him. I think a lot of this is being, sort of the gasoline. The media is pouring gasoline on the fire a little bit. I think that they're taking something that's very serious and making it almost quasi catastrophic, or like maybe it could be apocalyptic. They're hinting around that this is way more dramatic than it really is. And you got to wonder with the I think 5 major corporate entities that pretty much control the media in the Western world. You got to wonder what's going on here culturally. Are we seeing? Are they crashing the system and to weed out some of the corporations? Because they're saying $500 billion. Trump is going to be able to pick and choose who gets it. For the big boys that are lining up with their freaking greasy palms, standing there in the line saying, "Well, we need this," whether it's legitimate things like the airlines, which will be lucky if they don't get nationalized before this is over.
All they got to do is just borrow money, borrow on the collateral of their airplanes. The money that and they can easily just refinance, go bankrupt and refinance. They don't really need a federal bailout, but the ordinary people are the ones that need the bailout.
Sasha, what are we looking at here? I mean, Trump is saying, look, as soon as this 15-day thing or 14-day thing that I, got talked into putting up, even though, I was forced into it, which actually should be 30 days minimum. He got forced into this 2-week thing. He's saying, look, I'm going to let it, I'm just going to let it run out. And, we're going to go business as usual. Can you imagine? This thing is only going to, maybe it'll be about a third of the way worked into the public in terms of the virus. Is going to be a third, maybe half of the way into its the wave through the culture that it's going to create.
Well, let's go back to what you said at the beginning of the show. It looks like China had a lot more deaths. And covering it. Yeah. So, so maybe what's coming in from China is totally inaccurate, and they're still dealing with it.
But wait a minute. What about the head of chemistry at Harvard University? Remember that story that happened
who?
2 months ago? 2 months ago, remember?
No, I didn't hear. No, tell us.
he was
an island. I just have internet news. I don't have television. So this is a chemist. Where was this chemist at?
He was the head of chemistry at Harvard. He was arrested for espionage and had 2 Chinese accomplices, students, one of which was either a current or former member of the Chinese military. And one of them got busted trying to leave the U.S. at Logan Airport with 21 vials of bacteriological materials, which I've never seen named. But the inference was that it's classified and, way bad, bad boy. You just got busted big time. So, and he was taken away. The Harvard professor, tenured, come on, at Harvard, the head of chemistry at Harvard, he was getting paid like $500,000 and stuff to, supply biological materials. And I think they were having him help, something at Wuhan, which is the only, as I said at the beginning of the show, the Wuhan Biophysical Lab, to my knowledge, is, right there south of Wuhan, and that's the only one in China. I mean, what are the odds that you should have an outbreak there? And also, we had a CDC person that was working in Wuhan that Trump fired in November, if I remember.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
That's a little scary. What do you think, Sasha? Is that a little kind of weird?
I think these guys, nothing is past these guys. Just there's like the Twin Towers false flag as an excuse to take away whatever civil liberties we had and kill Iraqis. These guys are capable of anything.
Yeah, they are.
See, I'm really out there. I think this is all intentional. It was created. They have Manchurian candidates. They plan it with this virus thing, maybe it's this guy you're talking about. They sent him over to China to launch it from there because they want China to be the great enemy and yada yada yada. Well, and now it's all.
I don't even know. I think maybe superficially, that's the narrative that they want to try to project. But I think they're all working together. I mean, it's the control structure. It's the haves and against everybody else, basically. It's like that 1 or 2%, the controlling eggshells, that's encompassing the egg. We're the egg, and we're being manipulated. And if you're not really, you might be on the inside of the big boys that make all the big decisions, but if you ain't inside enough, you're going to be just as screwed as the rest of us. I've met a few people that were on the the very outside of the inside. Like a Lawrence Rockefeller would be a good example of that. Carolyn Minkus was another, billionaire woman that I talked to about some of these things, and she was extremely upfront with her feelings. I had we met for drinks in the lobby of the St. Regis in first week of December '99, and she was asking me, "Are you going to be here for like Y2K? Or are you going to Times Square?" And I was like, "No, I lived 5 blocks away for 10 years, so I never went then. So I don't think I'm going to be around for that now." And she says, "Yeah, you better get the hell out of here." She was convinced that there was going to be a bacteriological event on Y2K in Times Square. I mean, she was really hitting around at that. She didn't come right out and say that, but it was pretty obvious. Either she was jerking my chain or, and having fun with me, or she was serious. She even gave me this black walnut tincture stuff that I should take in case there was some sort of, strange event. And that's, you go figure. You wonder, who these people are and where they get this information. So, anyway, I'm sure one of your listeners is going to look up Carolyn Minkus and find out about her. It's just it's weird, kind of how you meet people sometimes in particular circumstances.
Things keep happening, right?
But it reminds me of all that. This is really...
Maine was blown up by American agents.
I guess a Wuhan trying to that we're living in interesting times. There's just no two ways about it. The trickster is getting tricked. That's scary.
Can you hear us? Hi, can you hear us?
Hello?
Hello, can you hear us? Hello, can you hear us?
Really?
All of a sudden, our mic's not working. Okay, shoot. Keep talking. Oh, it's just a lag. Okay, I didn't know if you didn't hear us at all. Okay, so let's what did you want to share about this? So there's all these conspiracy things. So one of the conspiracy things is that COVID-19 was patented by Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And the other day we had a guest or somebody we were talking. We were just going over all the conspiracy things. So, what do you think about those types of things? Both of you.
Oh, I was just starting to rap about, the Maine was sunk by American agents so that we could war on and drive the Spanish out of the Caribbean. Again, a put-on deal. The Pearl Harbor Roosevelt ordered the Secretary of Defense to not allow the fleet to be in a defensive position, even though Yamamoto and the whole fleet was coming, and Roosevelt knew it because he wanted enough casualties so that we would war on Japan, and Germany would declare war on us, and we'd save Britain. And it goes on and on. And so you can count, I think that you can count on government lying to the people.
Can you hear us? Okay. Chris, can you
What
hear
happened?
us?
Yeah. What happened?
Well, we were just talking.
I have no idea how long. Yeah, I can hear you.
You couldn't hear us. Yeah, all of a sudden we couldn't hear each other. Okay. I don't know what you heard or what you didn't hear, but go ahead. You were on a roll. Go ahead. Keep going. What do you want to add?
Where was I? Where was I when my audio?
You're talking about the false flags and how the beneficent general narrative that a government puts out is usually a pack of lies.
Well, yeah, it's self-serving for the corporatocracy and the the moneyed class. Your one percenters, I guess, if you'd want to be crass and say it like that. There's a lot less of them now that we've seen such a crash in the economy and the stock market. Although I think today it went back almost 2,000 points. I mean, there's never been, at least to my knowledge of the stock market, there's never been such wild fluctuations with actual, 10% value up and down in a day. It's been like a roller coaster at Disney World or something. It's amazing, and metals too. It's amazing what's been going on in the metals market. I don't know if you guys have been noticing, but anyway, we live in interesting times. I think I said while I was talking to myself, we live in a Wuhan Chinese curse of may you live in interesting times. And I think it's downwind to the fish market. I think there's way more going on here than the media's telling us and the government's telling the media, who, of course, are only controlled by about 5 different corporations. You can't trust really anything that the mainstream has to say about any of this. Be smart, be safe, and if you can't be safe, be sanitary. You did it again. I love it. Fuck. Oh, no. Well, what's going on?
I'm back. I don't know what's going on. I keep getting booted.
Oh, man.
I had to go click back into the show. We had a good friend, George Green. He passed a year ago in June. And he wrote, he was dealing with the big boys. He said, I used to run with the big boys. And so he was in the meetings before, what's his name?
He's the inventor of derivatives.
And he invented derivatives. So he was a financial genius, and they pulled him in. He was in with Kennedy and all these people in the 60s and 70s, and they were setting up some things in the economic system for the United States. And they said to him, we're going to have this guy, Jimmy Carter, come on. He's going to be the next president. And George was a good Republican and gives this guy a Democrat or Republican. And they said, well, he's a Democrat. And George said, well, I'm not going to work for any Democrat. But anyway, they said, well, it doesn't matter if it's a Democrat or Republican. We always select who we want, and we want this guy, Jimmy Carter, and he's going to be the next president. So anyway, they developed this thing about derivatives, and that was the 2008 crash. And so this has all been orchestrated. I'll have to go back and listen to the last interview, which I think was May of last year. So he basically was telling us all along that this was coming. And we were kind of like, oh, no, that can't be coming. But here it is. It's here. So you said earlier about this is intentional to take down corporations. He talked about the depopulation bomb. They wanted to get the world's population down to 500,000. They created the Georgia
50 million. 50 million. 50 million, I think, isn't it?
50 million. I hope it's 50 million. 500 million is pretty low. I think it's 500 million. I don't know. I don't have the stats in my head right now. Okay.
Yeah, 500 million. You're right. $500 million. That's the service class.
Yeah, we would be the service class. It's all we need. So, what do you think about all that? Is this what's happening? Is this apocalypso? Or is this about reducing population? So you're saying you think it's going to be about 10%. Yeah, I thought they were saying 3 to 4%. But, everything that's out there that could all be a bunch of lies.
10% is the what seems to be the virulent strain, the most virulent strain of this COVID-19. I think that it's like 8 to 10% from what I can tell. Again, a lot of that, how many people actually have it being tested.
There was a hospital that got tested the other day in New York, major hospital, and they tested everybody. They tested all the patients and all the staff and all the doctors and everything. It was over 50% positive. So that's probably what's going on right now. About half of our population has been infected.
Yeah, well, that's what Cuomo was saying. He says up to he was told 56%. I think of New Yorkers are going to be in New York as in New York City. I'm in upstate. I've got a quarter mile between me and my neighbors. I'm on the highest mountain in the county, on the top.
Where's that? By Woodstock or something?
No, about 45 minutes west of Binghamton, right along the Pennsylvania border.
Oh, lovely. Yeah.
I look down into Pennsyltucky, as I would rather call it. I live just above Pennsyltucky. There's a lot of good old boys up here, I'll tell you. Because there's a lot of good old boys up here. A lot of people with jeans. There's just a lot of good old boys up here. They God, gun, guts, and glory made America great.
Make America great. Yeah, I'm from Pittsburgh, so I was little
hop, skip, and a jump.
Hop, skip, and jump for West Virginia. Try that. There's a lot of good old boys.
Well, it's funny how West Virginia for several days was the only state that didn't have a reported case. That's because it took them quite a while to even be taught what a testing kit was. It's kind of hard to have cases if you ain't testing. It's like, well, what you think? We should be testing over here, don't you think? Okay, where do you get them things? Well, I think if we ask, the guys in Virginia, they probably know. So we'll get them to send them. Okay, let's test. And then 3 weeks later, whatever, we got one.
That's West Virginia.
Yeah. I love it. Robert Byrd, remember him, senator from West Virginia. Robert Byrd probably set the record for pork barrel, additions on the, amendments on the bill. I wonder what's going on in this $2 trillion package that's coming out. It'd be interesting to see some of the pork barrel addendums and amendments and stuff on that sucker. $2 trillion.
So one of them was shelter any company, the big pharma that developed something to immunize people with from any windfall taxes and or price controls, and so forth and so on. Basically, it's and the cruises that they want. The cruise ships are usually foreign owned. They don't pay any tax here. There's and they can certainly borrow money on their own collateral or refinance their go to bankruptcy and refinance. They don't need the money. The ordinary people need to be have food and
you think?
Especially.
Do you really think after this that people are going to want to take cruises ever again? I mean, really? I mean, how stupid can it's like a petri dish.
Okay,
why don't you
wait a
go
minute.
in and
okay, last summer, I did my first and only cruise. I went from Galveston to Cozumel, and they screwed up, and they wouldn't let me. I missed they screwed up the announcement for my group, and we missed the freaking buses to go to Chichen Itza. So I went out. Yeah, well, that was, what can you do? Life's a bitch, and then no, we went to Merida. What am I saying? We went to Merida, then to Cozumel, and Merida is where we were going to go. About a half hour, 40 minutes to Chichen Itza. Of course, I've been to Chichen Itza 3 or 4 times, but they had one of those the Ancient Mysteries folks had cruise. Robert Schock was there. I was blown away listening to his recent work in Göbekli Tepe and the whole idea of a series of solar events that destroyed civilization. That's why they buried Göbekli Tepe, he thinks. Buried it in situ. Really, really interesting work. I mean, he's a very bright, forward-leaning, out-of-the-box thinker. But he's definitely got the science chops to back it up. I was very, very impressed, and then Nick Redfern, of course. I only knew 4 people that wrote 50 books or more. Brad Steiger, Rosemary Ellen Guiley, Nick, and who was the other one? Whatever. Nick's an amazing guy, and David Weatherly was also speaking. He's published 30 or 40 books, written, I think, 6 or 7. And I got them all together, and we're going to be a team on TV with some ladies too. The project that we were full steam ahead, and then boom, everything got shut down. Everybody's working from home. Fly out for a meeting? No way, not for a while. It kind of sucks, But
yeah.
Hey, you guys are in Hawaii. You live in paradise. Fuck. Jeez, man. Are you on Maui? Where are you? I forget. You're in Maui, right?
Yeah, Maui.
Yeah.
We're in Maui.
Yeah.
So yesterday they had like 57 cases. Today they've got 91. But we just got the memo that they have the test available. So I think people are running down to the War Memorial and getting their tests done. So we're going to see. We'll never have any idea how many caught it or died. This has been around for months now. The cruise ship got off, and the cruise line docked in all the ports here in Hawaii. And this is after the other 2 cruise ships that were the one in Japan, and I forget the other one. So we already knew about the cruise ships, but they let the Princess Line come through and dock on 4 islands, and those people have 3,500 people on those cruise ships, and they get off and they invade our town. They go to all of our malls and shopping centers, and then they go back on. So by the time they got to San Francisco, they had, I forget what they had, 30 or 40 cases that were identified. And they invade
Ala Moana. Is that still there? Ala Moana?
Oh, yeah, I'm sure they invaded Ala Moana. They came into, Honolulu is the harbor is right down at the foot of our hill there. So they just went all over our stores and our malls. I'm surprised we don't have more, but we might. I mean, it takes what? That was middle of February, so here it is. It's March, so it has a delayed response before it shows up. So we'll see.
Yeah.
Why do they think next month? Because it's got, I saw a demonstration with a bunch of dots, and they said, here's how it spreads, and the dots were just randomly bumping into each other. It's like, soon, in just 10 seconds of the dots going around, the whole population has been tested. Oh, God.
Oh, well.
So anyway, have you been tested?
No, God, no. No way. I'm just making sure that I don't, I tick off all the boxes for most at risk, so, except I'm not over 70, but I've got COPD, and, I've kind of been dealing with a little heart issue, and so I don't have diabetes. I actually beat it. I kind of had it, and then did a total lifestyle change, and got my A1C and my whole sugar and insulin thing totally under control, and also I had high blood pressure, but I don't anymore, and so I've been kind of working on that life extension sort of area a little bit, and I've been ridden beyond the point of wet on more occasions than I will even remember and know, and put away very wet on just year in and year out for a long time. I'm very lucky to be alive. I've actually died. I died, but actually, let's see, it would have been, today's my birthday. That's how I figured you guys hounded me. I've never been hounded ever, is even close. Everything came in multiples of 4. Everything that you sent me about, you've got a show appearance, whatever that robot is, it's way too good. All I need is one little reminder a day before, and I'm just getting inundated with these things today. I'm going delete. Oh boy. Okay, here's 3 more. Delete. It's like, okay, I know I have a bad reputation, but no, you know me too well.
Well, we got you here. That's
good. Yeah, I don't do many of these anymore. So,
what was you said? This Robert, who was it? Robert Schoch blew your mind or something?
Well, he's just. She what? I missed it. I didn't hear what you said, Sasha.
Janet didn't know the context, and I was telling her that there was this big thing going on in Chichen Itza.
Well, it's not Chichen Itza. Janet, you know who Robert Schoch is, right? He was the first one.
Yes.
He's the professor of geology at Boston University. He was the first one to really figure out that the Sphinx was vertically eroded, and it wasn't the result of floods of the Nile or whatever. I mean, it was rainfall that totally, the body of the Sphinx weathered it, which is at least 10,000 years minimum, which totally throws. I mean, he was the first academic to really come out and say, this is not, 3,000, 4,000 years old. It's minimum 10,000, probably a lot older. And, I mean, that Sphinx was built when, the upper part, the whole upper horn of Africa was verdant with lush, the Sahara was,
Great.
was an oasis all the way to Morocco. And then gradually as it dried out, then it became the breadbasket for Rome and Greece. Most of the grain that fed Rome and the whole Roman Empire came from North Africa because it had dried out, but it was still savanna and not desert. And it was getting enough rainfall. And that's where all the grain, the barley and especially wheat came from the Carthage, and then they with the Phoenicians, and they were the ones that were making sure everybody was getting bread. It's Robert. I really love his work because he backs everything up with an academic's rigor. He's very, very good. He's really super brave to buck against the establishment, and he's so enthusiastic. And his wife is like, they're a team, like you guys. It's like a two-headed monster. You're not dealing with just one person. I was sitting next to her when he gave his first presentation, and I was getting this wonderful, she was sitting behind me, so I couldn't see her, but just hearing what she was saying under her breath or, commenting along was great. I was like, it was so, actually, it really put everything into a whole new three-dimensional context, listening to some pretty, I can listen to dense information and retain it. So I was really getting off on, I was a geology minor actually in college. So, he tried to, keep it as layperson friendly as possible, but, you got to get off into, some serious geology to explain the type of concepts that he's dealing with. But when he said that the evidence is now really to him, in his mind, saying about 12,000, between 11 and 12,000 years ago, we had a series of very intense solar events that fried, the area. And actually at the end of that, instead of the Middle East and the Tigris and the Euphrates in Iraq and Syria and then over into Iran and the mouth of the Tigris and the Euphrates, all that was Eden. That was so verdant. It was so lush up into Greece. The Middle East was much more lush. And whatever these celestial events, the solar events were, they dried everything out big time. And it never really recovered. And it's been going to desert ever since. And he said that at the time there was, well, he doesn't really go into this, but the inference is that what we're seeing is the results of an epoch of humanity that was here before this one, and that they got fried out of existence, and we barely were able to keep the whole thing going on. People that were able to get out of the way in caves and subterranean areas, protecting them from the radiation and the mutations and everything else that happened. It's just fascinating work.
Did he have any idea, theories on what made these solar events? Was there some kind of influence?
He didn't really go into that. He didn't think that it was something that was unnatural. The sun goes through periods when right now we're in a minimum period, and as a result, one of the things that's very peculiar, the magnetic North Pole is now has passed the Grand Meridian, that goes up through Greenwich, the Greenwich Mean Time. That line that goes up to the North Pole, magnetic North Pole, is now going towards east towards Russia. I think at about a kilometer a year. Just some incredible. It's just taken off in geologic time. It's like doing a sprint to the east. There's a lot of interesting things going on with the planet right now, and I get a sense from his work that he thinks that there's a lot more complicated facts that's behind the way civilizations rise and fall, and how we think we know everything, but we really don't. So
no, we don't. You have a comment, question?
Just that Sitchin, working with the Sumerian stuff, certainly says that describes the whole Mediterranean, Eastern Mediterranean, just the way you described it, and basically, as you know, my research shows that there were people here when the Anunnaki came 450,000 years ago. They took North Africa, Turkey, and Iraq. Basra is where Enki had his headquarters, and they had a station down at Point Arguelles in South Africa, and they kept saying, you know what, the next perigee of Nibiru is coming close, and it looks like we're going to be positioned so that Earth will be in a vulnerable position, and so they were expecting the ice sheet on top of Antarctica to melt, and that wasn't as big as great big glaciers rolling off and causing the size of Maryland, making the waves and going up the Persian Gulf, and that was a huge flood. There were several flood episodes, but this was certainly one of them that was recounted in a lot of detail. And I think what Sitchin did is he just translated the stuff pertaining to the Anunnaki, but there's so much evidence that there were lots of people here way before the Anunnaki got here.
Yeah, I mean, if you really want to get into what really the kind of research that really blows my mind is, of course, the forbidden archaeology, the Michael Cremo stuff of 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 course the classic one of the axe. What is it? It's a sledgehammer with a wooden handle that's in solid rock, and it is still in situ. They saved it so that it was preserved. It's super well documented. They found figurines at the bottom of a mile-deep mines or wells that they've dug. They found just footprints with a mid-tarsal break in rock that's, I think, 60 million years old. It's just if you go through that book, I'm sure you're well aware of it. Forbidden Archaeology, the Michael Cremo classic. It's just every page, a page upon page upon page of things that suggest, some sort of humanoid intelligence has been rocking and rolling on this. Marble in space for a long time, and we're just the latest, iteration. We're version 5.7 or something. It's amazing, and people think, well, what are these reptoids? I keep telling people, hey, the dinosaurs, they probably the last million or 2 years, 200 million years, dinosaurs were here. They became sentient. And they knew that asteroid was coming, and they left. The ones that could leave left, and now they're coming back to reclaim, their old mailbox address. Yeah, and people want to know what the reptoids are.
Definitely. What Stuart Swerdlow, who had access to the CIA documents, basically that the reptiles, the Dracos who were pursuing the Lyrans into this solar system, blew up Maldek on the way there.
Wait a minute. When you start going into Tiamat and Maldek and stuff, you have to refer to Joseph Farrell's, I think, his best book that doesn't have to do with document research. Have you ever read Cosmic War? Joseph Farrell.
Yes,
it's one of his first books.
Absolutely, yes.
I mean, that takes Sitchin. I mean, that he, instead of just having the stovepiped blinders on and just looking at the Sumerian, Assyrian, Babylonian, that even into Chaldean and stuff, instead of just looking at that, look at the rest that was going on and what they were saying. Yeah. And so he synthesizes all the Enki and Enkidu and the Anunnaki and the Nephilim and all that. He synthesizes it from various disciplines. Now, we're talking about an Oxford research scholar, an Oxford University research scholar. He's a really bright dude. Cosmic War.
What's going on with so your fields? What are all your fields of expertise? Because you're very knowledgeable. What do you consider
nothing?
Fields?
I'm not an expert in anything except maybe the history of progressive rock and really looking at the studios and producers and engineers from the late 60s through the 70s in rock and roll recording. Other than that, let me think. Let
me just stop with that one for a little bit. Do you know about the hidden persuaders that are built into and messages built into records that we didn't know about? Do you know anything about that stuff?
Actually, that was my area of concentration for my broadcast media.
Wow.
Well, I was going unofficially. I was non-matriculated, but my area of concentration in broadcast media was overt and covert subliminal programming techniques used by the media and whomever.
Wow.
So I know a lot about that. Yes. And you're talking about the Hidden Persuaders, which is Bernays, the famous book on advertising. I really love the I forget who did AMC. I think Mad Men. I missed it when it was out originally. I didn't watch it, but then I spent several months watching that really closely. That was a very, very interesting, one of the best, I think, dramatic series that have ever been on television. And of course, it's all about the advertising business from the late 50s through the late 60s, that 10-year period. And the work.
That's the guy, yeah.
Bernays. He there was a bunch of people. McLuhan. I was a huge Marshall McLuhan fan. He's the one that came up with the concept of the global village and how everything is going to become instantaneous. The whole world is going to be accessible to anybody at any time, anywhere. All these things were coming towards that. Of course, throw a little bit of Orwell in there and maybe a little bit of Huxley and, add a dash of Sartre and Kierkegaard and others just to make it interesting. We live in a brave new world. We really do. We're seeing manifestations in its own sort of historical, period way. We've been seeing manifestations of predictions that have been made from Wells and on forward to the present. I'm a huge fan of keeping track of what's going on in my reality. I kind of make notes of dates and, like for instance, I have a theory. Okay, this is you want to know what I think is going on here? All this craziness that's been going on for the past 4 years. This is okay. Consider this. Now, I'm not saying this is what happened, but do your research and then you get back to me and tell me what you think. Okay. Here's the date. This is a very important date, June 14th, 2015. Now, on that day, if you go back through history, a lot of really cool, interesting things happen. I won't digress, but on June, in other words, June, what did I say, 14th? I think June 14th, all the way back in history, a lot of cool things happen. But in 2015, the Large Hadron Collider had a super secret experiment, and at the end of the day, unofficially, they were jumping up and down because it was successful, but it was kind of a classified thing, and nobody really knows what happened. I'll tell you what happened. We got put into a freaking parallel universe that's some sort of alien freaking freaking reality show that's like a black comedy on some freaking galactic TV station, and we're like number one with a bullet in this time the time slot. I mean, come on, what's been going on since June 2015, the day that Donald Trump announced that he was running for president? I think we were put into an alternate freaking time continuum. We're living in this weird reality show parallel universe. I mean, what else could explain the most mind warping? I'm trying to come up with descriptions that don't have swear words in them. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, come on. I tell you, those pencil-necked freaking nerds at underground in Switzerland, the Large Hadron Collider, they're responsible. We've gone into a whole different continuum. I will never forgive them for what they have made this freaking planet go through in the last 4 years. Well, 5 years.
June 14, 15. So there's
look it up.
About Trump. I'm looking it up. I'm gonna find out
but Jen has this whole thing about time travel.
Well, yeah, I think what happened was apparently Trump's uncle, John, got the Tesla time travel equipment, and of course Trump had enough money to hire the right people to figure it out. That was one thing. And so they have a book that was written in the turn of the century. It's the Adventures of Baron Trump, and of course he named his son Baron. And it has the Trump gets elected.
I forgot about that. Oh man!
Yeah,
cool. The plot thickens.
The plot thickens. So. And then, well, this gets really out there for you, but so I was, I'm a spiritual contactee, and I was taken on board a ship when I was 4 years old. But once I was on board, I was my eternal self, so I had the awareness of who I was in the continuum. And I was shown 24 different alternative timelines. So when you're talking about alternative timelines, they showed me the potentialities, 24 different major, I mean, it could be endless, but there were 24 major potentialities of where we could go. And on the one side of the continuum, it was like a total destruction of the whole Earth, and on the other side, it was absolute utopia.
Blissful nirvana.
I did. I went to Nirvana. I said, well, I don't want full Nirvana because there's nothing left to do. So I said, how about the third one from the end?
There you go. Yeah, you could handle. You could almost handle that.
So we can handle that. So that was in 1958 when I was 4. So then fast forward to the 20-year anniversary of the Philadelphia experiment, which was August 12th, 1963, right? And then when they took back my timeline, you took my timeline. We were going to go and have this great future, and then so they shifted us up there in Montauk, and so now we're on the timeline where we get Kennedy assassination and all that crap.
Did you play doctor with Duncan Cameron?
I didn't get to play. I did talk to. No, I never got to talk to Duncan. We kept trying to arrange that, and he needed to play Slim. And I said, "Come, you can come live here." Because I was curious. We never made it. Now he's dead. But we talked to Preston Nichols, and we talked to. We went up to where Stuart Square lives. We went to a conference there, and we spent I don't know, a week and a half.
And Peter Moon hits your pie like a big pizza pie. Or hits your eye like a big pizza pie. And Peter Moon?
Peter's been on several times.
I know.
And we were deconstructing.
How's Preston doing? Nichols, Mr. Twitchy. How's he doing?
Preston died, I think. There were two.
Oh, he did?
Preston, I think.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to.
Yeah, I think they died within a couple months of each other. It was like,
really?
I wanted to.
Oh, that sucks.
Man.
Now, who died? Al Bielek? Al Bielek died when he did?
Al Bielek died a few years ago.
Yeah. And you guys are cutting in and out when you try to talk over each other. It just everything goes blank. Just so you know.
All right. So Preston Nichols died October 5th, 2018.
Oh, so just recently.
Did you hear?
Okay. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I think what you have is you should take the setting for automatic recording where it's like a noise gate. It shuts off and on if you're talking. You should always have that off. You have it on. That's why you sound so bad.
Fix it.
I don't know how to fix that.
It's easy. Go into preferences and Skype. Yeah,
okay.
I think Sasha, you may have that automatic noise gate thing on to automatic recording, which clips everything and it makes it really difficult to hear because if you don't, if the last couple words are soft, they get clipped off. So
I see. Okay, I'm trying to get into my settings.
Anyway, just
right, so
engineering 101. Yeah, anything I can do to help. If you think that there's, obviously you think that there's some really importance to your experiences having to do with. I'm familiar with some of your work, but I didn't know about this time travel thing. It's very interesting to me. All that stuff is it's interesting, but I'm pretty skeptical about a lot of it because I don't really know enough, in terms of the potential science.
What I find interesting, because I regard everything that we language or mathematize as merely a set of hypothetical constructs that help us predict, and so it doesn't. What I really care about is what kind of predictions do we get based on these different stories as hypotheses.
Yeah,
and that's why the Sumerian stuff is so attractive.
That's a really good place to spring from, because if it's predicted and it occurs, you're onto some.
And you also ask what kind of evidence would it take to make it less likely. And the other third hypothesis is if there's several hypotheses, they're probably all contributing factors. So if you start with those sets of things, it's all nonsense that our causal brains, and we know that causality is a mathematical mistake because systems precogene stuff of how any system has perturbations that run through it, and they become increasingly rough until the system either breaks up or reorganizes at a higher level. That's all systems.
Yeah, exactly.
It gives you a framework for seeing everything, and so it doesn't matter whether you anthropomorphize planets as talking to each other or not. If you say that, the asteroids between Mars and Jupiter, or between Mars and Earth, for that matter, came about because something struck the Pacific Basin. Therefore, the asteroids, at least a lot of them, should be made out of the same stuff as Earth. And then when we get our probes out there, we can see, is that so or not? And how does it deviate? And how does it support that? So that's how I look at this stuff.
Yeah. Well, science is nothing more. What did Descartes say when he was on his way back from conquering Bohemia as a young 20-year-old soldier in the Spanish army? He was camped and he had a dream, and an angel came to him and said, the secret is in measure and number. And that's what created the whole scientific, the Enlightenment of measuring nature and breaking it down to smaller and smaller constituent parts. And I think exactly that. I mean, you're getting down sort of in that Hermetic axiom, the Trismegistus of the that which is above is that which is below, or whatever the as above so below quote is there. And I think that's when you get into the variables of timelines and composite timelines that the build up, you have 3 or 4 timelines, they influence another timeline. It's just the average person, it's very difficult for them to even conceptualize, even cognize that they need to conceptualize understanding of that.
I think that the two-slit experiment with the camera set up,
of course,
before the wave passes through the windows, shows that the not just the future changes, but the past changes too. That everything changes, and so you can just demonstrate it but every level of organization has a way of looking at it that's epiphenomenal, and you can't explain it just by reducing. You have to keep getting broader and broader perspectives if you're going to account for more and more of the data.
That's the macro versus the micro.
Yeah,
it'll work. If you're going down to the particles of subatomic particles, it's still going to be mirrored in cosmology and in galactical movement and the way things, the way fractals self-organize and stuff. Have you had Nachim Haramein on your show? He's the guy that.
He came to Maui and we went to his class. But what we were going to say about Nassim.
Yeah, you should definitely have him on. I did a video project with him, and I recorded with a team. We did a 3-camera shoot, and very early after he announced that he had actually literally determined the weight of the proton, which is just mind blowing. Conceptually, what that means in terms of pure cosmological physics. I mean, that's huge. You can, by knowing the weight of a proton or the mass and weight, it just opens up a huge realm of possibility that you wouldn't have unless you could do that. I'm not sure, Sasha, you're I think pretty up to speed scientifically. I was really impressed, and this was a number of years ago now. It's about 3 years ago, or 4 years ago, when he announced that he figured it out. And I haven't heard anybody refute it. No one's tried to tackle it, to my knowledge, and refute it in terms of peer review. So, and more power to him. And he's a really neat guy. He's a sweetheart. I mean, he lived in his van for like several years and just barely eking by when he's doing all the really heavy duty math and stuff. Living on the beach and stuff. He's just a really sweet guy. I really like him. You definitely should have him on your show. He's so inspiring. He's so inspirational.
He's on the island of Kauai. I liked how he animated the yin-yang symbol to show how you could the singularity and how the singularity is in everything from the biggest.
Well, his social media posts, a lot of it have to do with fractals and nature mirroring mathematics and that interface of how nature is entrained into these particular systematic forms, and it's amazing because it goes all the way down to this the subatomic level, and it goes all the way up to the macro, and galaxies and stuff. I just find it just infinitely fascinating. That's why with this coronavirus thing, I tick off all the boxes. I'm the guy that really has to be really afraid, you know.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there surfing along, going, well, I think we'll see if the universe thinks I still have something that I got to contribute. So I'm having fun, even though it put my TV show development in my film, James Fox's film. Have you had him on? The film he's coming out with in 1,400 movie theaters here in September. I was so honored to have him call me up and say, hey, there's only two guys I trust, you and Jacques Vallée. Come out here. I'll fly you out here. You check out my movie. Make sure it's okay. Make sure, the dialogue, in terms of the actual voiceover work is good, and work on the trailer and stuff. And I was like, wow, what an honor, to have. That's disclosure. 90% of the people that are going to see that, the million plus, will have interest in UFOs, for instance, but they won't know crap about the history. And so this is going to give them a history that has cool stuff that even people like me, who saw the movie for the first time, I went, whoa, I didn't know about this footage. I didn't know about this case. What, it's got something for everybody. But when they look back, at this time period, everybody will say, yeah, the moment that, really broke it wide open in terms of the UFO subject was when James Fox's movie came out in the theaters. That's going to make the gimbal thing. What?
Are they going to be able to do that? Do you think realistically we'll be through all this and back to walking around and going to theaters by September?
Get on Netflix.
No.
Yeah.
Too many people have spent too much money. It's going to happen. Believe me. There's a lot of people that are. There's some people high up in the film industry that have been waiting decades for this opportunity to come along. And this is the first one that's been given the kiss of approval. Okay, this is it. This is not some local regional thing with 20 or 30 screens.
No.
This is a complete. Full-blown 1,400 screens, and then it's already being translated into I don't know how many languages. And it is, when I first saw it, it was a Adobe Premiere, film project on a desktop. Right now, it's booming, thumping feature film in a movie theater, 70 millimeter, just boom. You'll see. You're going to go and see it and go, oh, my God. I mean, it's just the ending. Check it out. Okay, here's a spoiler alert. If you don't want to know how this film ends, turn your volume down. Oh, no, I won't even tell you. It's just so awesome the way he ended the film. He is the only filmmaker that's remotely associated with ufology. The only filmmaker. I am so proud of him. $2 million, and he was 18 hours away of losing his house, his wife, everything, all his cars, whatever. I mean, he was literally less than a day away from losing everything, and he managed to pull, the proverbial rabbit out of the hat. And I'll tell you, the last 5 minutes of the film, he took 2 weeks on to edit it correctly.
You'll have to tell us when we get off air what the
it's really one of those few emotional moments I've ever had professionally, and as a popcorn chewing butt in the seat. I mean, and let's put it this way: the editor who he'd been working with for 2 months had, when he James and I had tweaked it, and we really got it dialed in terms of the soundtrack. The soundtrack wasn't swelling at the right time with the strings, blah blah blah. It's a whole creative thing. That got tightened up, and it just beyond tug on the heartstrings. The editor had to excuse himself because he was blubbering. I couldn't believe it. It's like, well, I had tears streaming down my face too, and Jacques Vallée wiped away a tear, or he pretended to. I don't know. What? Oh yeah. I'm telling you, you'll see. You'll see. Yeah. Check out the trailer online. Phenomenon.
The trailer has it.
Yeah. It's been a couple months. Yeah.
Oh, I got it. Okay, we'll get the trailer and we'll put it on the show page. So we'll tease you.
Yeah. Well, I'm James's biggest fan. I'm president of James's fan club, and we're working on a 10-part miniseries that's going to follow up the film. I'm going to help him write and develop and write a miniseries. Yeah, 17.
So are you working with contact experiencers? Because what's happened to me, I can't prove a thing because that's not how it works, right? But lately, so I was under Johnson Atoll, which is a military base, and it's closed now, but it was in the Pacific Ocean.
It's not really closed.
It's not really. It's closed officially. It used to be civilian. So I was underneath that, and I was in a ritual, and so I had this whole experience. And of course, when you're experiencer contact, you can't prove anything. But in this past week, I had someone just write to me and said I was there too, and so we're going through. And then I had this other guy, Lessin Hayes, and he said that he was on Johnson Atoll setting up the HAARP array. He goes all over the planet, and this was a few years ago, and so we talked, and he said, I said, well, is there an underground base? Because as an experiencer, I'm going, was that, mind control? Did I make it up? You doubt yourself. And he said, oh, yeah, it's down by the shark chute. It's 13 floors down. You can get, and I go, so I keep getting this validation because, when you're experiencing your party goes, you're crazy, right? That has to be crazy. It's just beyond. So are you dealing with experiencers? Because if we had somebody really treating that seriously, taking that seriously, and connecting the dots, this whole amazing, expansive picture, the puzzle will just emerge. But we've got to have somebody taking it seriously.
And national security people not shutting us down. That's the other side of it.
Yeah, well, I interview all these. I interviewed everybody. I had thousands. I don't know.
Well, yeah, you guys are in a perfect position to be a clearinghouse for this type of experiencer-based research, and you guys should coordinate the whole thing. Me, I'm more of a journalist. I'm looking at at sort of a big picture thing and trying to do big picture stuff, and then at the same time work at artfully and with integrity manipulating the belief systems of millions of people.
So the bottom line is we have solutions for all this. If we were allowed to use the technology, the virus wouldn't go anywhere. We could, clear up the whole planet
you got to soften. Janet, you got to soften people up. You got to put them into a position where they're open enough and aware enough and receptive enough to have their reality views blown and be ready for what's coming up. People have got to grow exponentially and in leaps and bounds right now. And we don't have time to, use the repetition way of training and in training, people's ability to expand and comprehend at the same time. It's really important for people that have an affinity with a group of people or an area of research to really dive into it. Obviously, you're plugged into that whole thing, which I just You know, I've seen them. I've been close enough to touch them. But in terms of contact, you know, I never had any kind of. I was yelling at them, "What do you want? What do you want?" And they wouldn't answer me. They were like, you know, robots, biobots, or whatever. And so I don't have that.
Answers.
What?
So tell us what you saw. What did you see? Back up there.
When I was 7, I had a up close and personal encounter with definitely 3, possibly 4 non-human entities. The 3 in the front were 3.5, 4 feet. My height. I was 7, almost 7. I think it was a week short of 7 years old or 2, and they were holding out in front of them these like 2-foot glittering rods. It's the only way I can describe them, and the only way I could see what they look like is the glow of these rods that was shining off of them. And I dashed out. I wasn't paralyzed. I didn't have any sort of. I didn't feel any connection with them at all on any level, and I thought. First, I was dreaming, and I hid under the covers, and then, you know, I came up out of the covers, and they'd gone from between me and my door, which is off to the side. They went around to the bottom of the bed, and when I pulled my covers back, and I saw them there, I just dashed out the door. I was in the basement. We lived in a split-level house, and so, you know, 2 floors were backed into the hill, and then the top floor was open. But anyway, I wanted to go to my parents' room up in the back of the house. They had their own little wing, and so I ran up the 10 stairs, grabbed the banister, turned the corner to go up the last 4 stairs, and they were standing right there. It was either them or another group. I don't know. There's no way that they could have beat me up there running. They either had to have teleported, or it was the same configuration of an additional group. And there was one in the back that was ducked down and was trying not to be seen, and it seemed to be taller than the other ones. They were dirty white colored. I've blocked out what their eyes look like. I don't recall, you know, almond shaped eyes. They did have larger heads. They were impossibly skinny. I described them as stick men, and they were holding spears, the light spears, is how I described it to my family. And they, you know, to make a long story short, I had one of the most riveting experiences of my life where they followed me 2 neighbors over. I was trying to bang on their door and go in and call my parents, and you got out of the house. And then there's between 20 and 45 minutes later, from the last place that somebody saw me, it's 3 a.m. now in Bellevue, Washington. Then I was found 4 or 5 houses over on a deck. My sister found me. So anyway, yeah, it was. I've known ever since. That was the most important event, really, in terms of really rocking your world. I've only had a handful of events. That one is the first one, the biggie. I knew I was a really smart, bright kid. I learned to read when I was 3, and I was a really exceptional child. And that particular experience totally, it changed me. I've never been. Not even close to being the same, because I know there's something else going on here that nobody is telling us. You know, there's nothing official, nothing cultural, nothing, that unless you really start digging, this is not something that anybody is going to not only admit, but even talk about it, and,
so, in terms of existentialism, that is that the intention is that your mind be blown and be open. That because that's the result. The result is manifest. The intention is manifest by just that result.
There's no way I would be the person I am today there would be no way I would be the way that I am today unless I had that experience. That was completely that put me off. You want to talk about timelines? That experience put me on a completely different timeline. I was, in a very upper, middle class, lower upper class scenario as an adopted child. My brother, who's adopted, we were in a very, an influential. My dad was a world famous architect, and I was in a world. The head of NASA's funding for his liaison between NASA and funding with Congress for the Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo programs. Lou McGavro was my godfather. John Ehrlichman and his family were my parents' best friends. We, one of the kids is on my soccer team, and we used to camp together. And I was if I was 12 today, right now, and I had my paper out, I'd be Bill Gates' paper boy for the Seattle Times. I lived in Medina. I delivered papers to the warehouses and the collapse, and whatever. Anyway, be that as it. What?
Washington State.
In Medina, Medina on the lake in Bellevue. So anyway, I digress. I think that we're in very, very interesting times. I think there's going to be a lot of really cool things going on. I think the whole stigma is going to come flying off the unexplained aerial phenomenon, UFO, AAO, stovepipe subject. I think it's going to be totally fashionable, and actually it's going to be it'll become a cool thing, I really do. After this film, I really do feel that. And, we got to break through culturally. We got to break through somewhere, somehow. And it's either Bigfoot or UFOs. We're either going to find evidence of some sort of, metaphysical, paraphysical, cryptoid, humanoid. We're either going to find evidence of that, or we're going to have a breakthrough with my UFO data acquisition project, which I'm so proud of. I'm having, I just got cut our check today to fund our, the last part of our phase 1, where we're getting our, test environment set up with the multiple sensor data acquisition units and the 3 triangulated cameras. We just got our funding. The check got written today. Now I just have to figure out when I'm going to be able to get a flight to go out there and put everything in. It's going to be rough, but it's historic. No one's ever done it before. 3 cameras tied together, over the internet, with software that allows them to all triangulate on the same aerial object, complete with recording magnetometer, recording gravitometer with accelerometers, a radio frequency detection and measurement, complete atmospheric, the same package on the space station for barometric pressure, temperature, humidity. All these elements are going to be autonomous. They will operate on their own. We have been working for the last year training the software to discriminate with deep learning and artificial intelligence training techniques. Our softwares can, we want to obviously detect real things that are cool and not false positives. So we have this whole training aspect that's going on. We just sold another system, I think, yesterday or the day before. We have these made available. UFODAP at UFODAP.com if you want to become part of the solution. These are, like I said, triangulated camera arrays that have custom software. You can record anomalous events with GPS, totally get azimuth, size, direction, speed, azimuth, and then any perturbations in the magnetic or gravitational field. This is historic. No one's ever done this before, and we're very, very proud of it. Go to UFODAP.com, and we're not making any money on this. You want an entry-level system, it's under $500. You want a full-blown system, it's $5,000.
Can the public tune into your results as they generate?
Yeah, we're coming up with an idea to do webcams at each of our sites. We're not going to be broadcasting publicly the actual data real time, because that's not how you do science. We'll show. We'll have a secondary image for the actual, like a webcam. But we can't,
Wow.
we'll shoot ourselves in the foot if we, publicize all this. What do you think this is? That's not how scientists do. Not how science is done. We've got a group of consultants and people that are helping, that are, you got to.
Is it UFODAP.com? Is there a dot anywhere? Am I getting this right?
UFODAP.com.
Got that.
UFO, D as in dog, A as in apple, P as in Paul.
You got to put W's in front of it, honey.
No,
got it.
yeah, whatever.
Anyway.
As a D as in the data, A as in acquisition, P as in project.
UFO. Well, I'll get the link from you later. It's just not coming up. Oh,
Yeah.
Here it is. There it is.
There it is. Here it comes.
Boy, have you noticed since we've all been required to stay at home that the internet is funky like this? It just...
Well, that's because
There it is.
way more people plugged in. What else are they going to do? Go to work?
What else is... Yeah, can't go to work. Okay, so we've got that. I'll plug that in. Now, I'm trying to find the Disclosure movie, and it's pulling up a movie about transgender people.
Phenomenon. Phenomenon. Singular.
Phenomenon.
The phenomenon. Not
The phenomenon.
not phenomena. Phenomenon. NON is singular. A is plural.
Okay, cool. I'm going to look up that. And that, do they have a website for it?
Just do a YouTube search, the phenomenon, and then if you want, put plus sign
There it is.
box.
We got it.
Got both. I'll put those on the webpage for this show. Okay, we have about 10 minutes. Where do you guys want to go?
Well, I'm very much interested in Bigfoot or Homo erectus. I'm from UCLA, and we used to say that the people at the line at USC were Neanderthals, and so basically the Lost Book of Enki very clearly says that that Enki or Lucifer used genes from zygote of a Homo erectus female fertilized by either Enki or his son's sperm to make ultimately clones, and then later on they made them breedable. But they said very specifically that in our hybrid genetics is some of the phenomena of Bigfoot and their ability to be able to telepathically read other people and to feel compassionate, which the Anunnaki evidently weren't.
Right.
Compassionate, but Homo erectus was.
Well, and other things too. I have had two what I consider to be bona fide encounters, neither of which were visual. The first was at the base of Mount Shasta. This creature was pissed that somebody was up at the base of Mount Shasta the first week of April. We literally had to dig through banks on the logging road to get up to where we, were able to park and then hike up to the base of the mountain. And much to our annoyance, we ran into about a 7-foot tall mountain huckleberry hedge that ringed the bottom of Shasta on the south, kind of the west by southwest side of the mountain. And so as we're sitting there trying to figure out you couldn't even put your fist into this, hundreds and hundreds of year old and tougher than you could. A little tiny twig, you couldn't break it. A chainsaw, you would have ripped your chain off. It's just no way. We're there. We smell the most god-awful human skunk smell that I've ever smelled, and I'm sure Fritz too. It was a buddy of mine I was with, and it started coming through the mountain huckleberry, like crash, crash, crash. After it I don't know how to describe it. I've been quoted many times publicly by saying it sounded like a lion's roar, a steam train, and a bull elephant pissed off. It was like a I just don't know how to describe it. It literally vibrated my eardrums. And there was obviously some sort of subsonics, because I don't know how I ran almost an eighth of a mile down to the van, got in the van, and the next thing I knew, we were halfway down the mountain. And my buddy's almost sliding off to go off the road, driving so fast that we were almost going to, fly off the freaking road. And I'm beating on him to get him to slow down. That's the next thing I remember. That was really intense. Probably the most terrified I've ever been, except one time I got stuck on a rock face in the dark with a lightning storm and a waterfall in my face. Rock climbing 700 feet up. That was scary. But this was like terrifying. I to this day, I don't know what to make of it. But the reason why I bring it up is because I really have a sense that there's something paraphysical going on. There's too many really credible sighting reports where the animal's tracks are only visible for like a small number of tracks. Like in a case my brother was involved with, 4 tracks, one on the side of the logging road, one in the middle of the road, one on the other side, and then a swoop track going up the dirt, in the cut, the high side of the road, and then a broken pine bough. And when they had been kind of shook off their horses when they smelled it, and then they led their horses around the curve in the road, and they found the tracks in like pristine clay. The one track had the whorls from the foot, the actual footprint in it, and the track on the side where the animal was going up the hill, on the track on the side of the road, the grass was still coming up out of the track where it stepped on the grass and the long grass and the on the side of the road, and it was springing up from the footstep. There was no tracks going to the road, no tracks going away from the road, and there was no way it could have gone up a tree. There was no way it could have gone in any direction without leaving evidence. Renee Dehedron.
Why do you call it an animal
Well, whatever. That's the crypto, the accepted crypto thing. We're animals. I don't normally refer to us as animals, but when I look at some members of our culture, they're definitely animals. Okay, so I say animal just to differentiate. I don't know that they're people. I've never, I know people are people. I have plenty of friends and, relatives and stuff. Well, they're all dead, but, I've never met a Bigfoot, so I don't know if it's. The only thing I know is it's some sort of animal. How fully manifest it is, or whether it has exalted abilities to be paraphysical or not, I think my suspicion is that they do, based on the research that I've done. We're dealing with highly evolved beings, highly intelligent, and like Jack, what's he call himself? Kiwani Sapsirtis. I was turned on to his work back in the early 90s, and in fact, he invited him to Crestone, and one of his first real major speaking, one of his first speaking engagements was at my little monthly meeting that I had in Crestone, and he was the one that really. He put everything kind of into context for me. I kind of understood that there was a possibility that was the case, but nobody had ever shown me any kind of anecdotal or, even empirical evidence that could be possible. And when I saw his presentation, I went, yes, that totally makes sense. These things are not only aware, the only reason why they can stay away from us and be like the ultimate tricksters in many ways is because they have some sort of paraphysical ability. I had an experience going up the Carbon River again early April. Mowich Lake, the Mowich Lake Ranger entrance on the north side of Rainier was closed, and we hiked a mile in from outside of the closed gates, and then hiked about 4 miles up the Carbon River Trail. And I had a really loud whistle in front of me while I was in the woods with the river 100 yards over to my left. And I immediately stopped. I was with my girlfriend from New York who, grew up in the desert. She didn't know that this was like Disneyland, Alice in Wonderland to her. And she said, "What was that?" And I said, "Oh, it was probably a bird," knowing damn well I had never heard a bird like that ever. I still haven't. We had not heard any birds at all the whole day. Oh, well, Dad, we got to save it for next time. Perfect cliffhanger.